Welcome back. We're talking about the latest ceasefire in Gaza and the future for the people of the region. Joining us from Tel Aviv is the former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren. Ambassador Oren, thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
4 weeks of intensive bombing of Gaza. What has Israel achieved?
Well, on purely military terms, Israel has destroyed more than 30 tunnels that were dug under the Israeli border by Hamas with the express purpose of attacking Israeli farms, Israeli communities, kidnapping Israelis. Those have all been destroyed. Hamas's rocket stockpile has been greatly depleted, and Hamas has proven largely incapable of hitting Israeli cities and towns with rockets because of the Iron Dome anti-ballistic system. Hamas's military headquarters, its command and control centers have all been destroyed. And Hamas has proven once again to the people of Gaza that it can bring only destruction and poverty and displacement to the people of Gaza. And I think it has to answer to the people of Gaza. But at the same time, Israelis are asking themselves here whether the Israeli army went far enough. While Israel has been criticized in many places in the world for the use of force in Gaza, Israelis, with a very large percentage of the population here, seem to think that maybe the army could have gone further and taken advantage of the momentum gained by the army to fundamentally change the status quo which has existed over the past years, which has enabled Hamas to get bigger rockets, longer range rockets, and to fire them at Israel when it will.
Right, we now have a 72-hour ceasefire. Hamas has been calling for Israel to lift the blockade of Gaza, and it says that's one of its conditions. Is that going to happen?
No, I don't think Hamas is going to come out of this conflict, which it started, with any gains. And that will be the goal of Israeli negotiators in Cairo, to ensure that Hamas's demands are not met. Hamas had a long list of demands that included opening our border crossings between Egypt and Gaza, Israel and Gaza, lifting Israel's maritime blockade of Gaza, a great number of demands, and it will be Israel's goal in the negotiations to ensure that the ceasefire is and will remain unconditional.
You know, you say none of those demands are going to be met. You know, at the outset of the program, we said, we quoted the permanent observer of Palestine to the UN, Riyad Mansour, and he said that 50% of the population of Gaza is under 18. If you put them in a continuous situation of fighting and resentment and hate, this is an excellent atmosphere for radicalism. We have more of what he said on the American television program Meet the Press. So why don't you take a listen to that? Let's watch.
Hamas is part of the Palestinian political configuration. The question is how to deal with that. The first step is the national consensus government. Israel is trying to destroy this government. To destroy this government, it's pushing us back into divisions and allowing Hamas to have support in the Gaza Strip. The alternative is empower the national consensus government, allow the government of President Mahmoud Abbas to show the people in the Gaza Strip that it succeeded in having peace, in stopping the fighting, in addressing the wounds of our people in Gaza, then in lifting the siege in Gaza, giving people hope.
So I'm wondering, Mr. Ambassador, what's the future for Gaza as far as Israel is concerned? I mean, are you going to continue the blockade? Are we going to have another round of fighting just a few months down the road?
Well, let me be clear. I'm not a spokesman for the Israeli government anymore. I'm a former ambassador. I'm just a citizen of this country. I can explain the government's position, but my own position sometimes differs from the official one. But I do think that what is referred to as the national unity government, that is the unity government between al-Fatah, which dominates the Palestinian Authority on the West Bank, and Hamas in the Gaza Strip, is problematic from an Israeli point of view, because Hamas never accepted the three conditions established by the quartet for joining the peace process, and that is recognizing Israel, disavowing terror, and recognizing all former agreements between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. And Hamas has repeatedly rejected all three of those conditions. So the maritime blockade is not in place to punish the people of Gaza. It's not there to break the unity government. It's there to prevent missiles getting into the hands of terrorists who will not disavow terror, who then shoot those rockets at Israeli civilians and create a situation where Israel has to respond and Palestinian civilians get hurt. Trying to break that cycle, I think, is the goal of diplomacy at this point. And it's a goal that is, I think, shared by Israel, by Egypt, by Saudi Arabia, and yes, even by the Palestinian Authority.
Right, but it does affect everybody in the Gaza Strip, the fact that there is a blockade. Isn't that a form of collective punishment?
Well, the blockade is widely misunderstood. There was no shortage of food in Gaza. There was no shortage of medicines, humanitarian aids. Israel, and here I can speak as a former ambassador, during my period of tenure in Washington, Israel was put under pretty intense pressure to ease the blockade and to allow the shipment of construction materials, particularly reinforced concrete, into the Gaza Strip to build hospitals, build school and housing. And you know where that concrete went. The concrete went to building tunnels, it went to building bunkers and silos for missiles.
You know, when we look at the onslaught by Israel over the past 4 weeks, and we look at our pictures on television, we see a horrifying picture of women and children who've been killed. And I'm just wondering, how seriously has Israel been damaged in the court of world opinion? I mean, as I said, we saw these horrifying pictures, and now we are seeing a rise of anti-Semitism in Europe, condemnations from Latin America. There was a poll put out by the BBC which says that negative views of Israel's influence in the world now outweigh positive ones by 2 to 1.
I'm not surprised. I mean, this is precisely Hamas's strategy. It works very well, and we've seen it again and again. Hezbollah used the same strategy in its war with Israel in 2006. It works like this. Terrorists get rockets, they fire them at Israel. They create a situation where millions of Israelis are under rocket fire, even with Iron Dome. Living under rocket fire is just impossible. And Israel has to take measures. The terrorists dig in behind their civilian population or under the civilian population. They use the civilian population as a human shield. Israel takes extraordinary measures to try to minimize civilian casualties. It warns civilians to leave combat areas. But at the end of the day, civilians do get hurt. Sometimes they get hurt because the terrorists won't even let them flee combat areas. We've had cases of Hamas reportedly shooting civilians who tried to leave civilian areas. And then the pictures come out. And the pictures are indeed tragic. Make no mistake about it. Any civilian casualties, even those that are caused accidentally, are a great tragedy. And Israel investigates them very thoroughly. And those pictures then impact world opinion. World opinion translates into action in the UN against Israel, the delegitimization of Israel, denying Israel the right to defend itself. That's how Hamas threatens Israel.
But the criticism has also been coming from your closest ally, the United States. I mean, we've heard unprecedented criticism from Washington, calling your actions appalling, an absolute disgrace, totally unacceptable, totally indefensible. This is from Washington.
Right, and yes, I understand. And the United States gave us great support for Iron Dome. The president just signed into law a bill, more than $200 million of support for Iron Dome, and that was greatly appreciated by the people of Israel. On the other hand, when the United States uses words like appalling, that type of condemnation, that's not appreciated by the people of Israel. The United States has been involved in very complicated wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. I read a statistic today that said since President Obama came into office, American forces have killed 2,500 Afghani civilians accidentally in drone strikes in Afghanistan. And I've never heard the Israeli government come out and say that it's appalled by America's actions or Israel demands immediate and transparent investigation. I don't think that that type of language is appropriate between allies. And understand, I think America could show greater understanding the fact that we are fighting a terrorist enemy that is dug in behind civilian populations. Accidents happen. When they happen, they are investigated by the Israeli military, which works very closely with the judiciary in this country. International lawyers literally sit next to our generals and go over every move that they make. And when criminal negligence is found on the part of soldiers, then soldiers and commanders pay a price. They go to prison. This is a country of law. It's a democracy.
Okay, I have one final question, and this is a question I put to Dr. Hanan Ashrawi, the PLO representative, whom we've just talked to. I asked her whether the two-state solution was still alive, and she said that she had serious doubts about that. It's highly questionable whether there could ever be a two-state solution. Do you think it's still possible?
I do think it's still possible, and I think it's still desirable. But we have many obstacles, and these are not new obstacles. I'm an historian by training, not a diplomat. And I know that the Palestinians had an option to accept the two-state solution in 1937 and 1947. In the year 2000, 2008, they've always rejected these offers, even before the time when there were settlements and the time when there was a Hamas. There are very fundamental issues. And I think the most fundamental issue is the willingness of the Palestinians to actually accept a permanent and legitimate Jewish state, and to divide the land which we both regard as our homeland for our peoples, because there's no other way around it. We have to divide it if we're going to have a two-state solution. So it's going to require courage, leadership on both sides, and my hope is that we can still strive for that solution.
Ambassador Michael Oren, thanks for joining us. And that is it for this edition of The Heat. That's all we have time for. I'm Oren in Washington, D.C. Thanks for watching.